Good morning and welcome to the second day of the NNP Symposium. We are here for this session with our feature video for this symposium with a Q&A afterwards by Douglas Mudd. Hello.
Hello.
So we'll be talking about the treasures of the ANA Museum and some highlights of their collection. If you have not seen one of our feature videos before, it's a series that we began in fall of 2021. This is the fifth one we've done. It's a video that's about 20 minutes long, focusing on an important collection, either historical or current. So for this one, it's the ANA collection. The other ones are all available on our website if you really like the format and want to see some others that are similar. But that's all for me. We will be doing a Q&A at the end, and we'll have quite a bit of time for that. So feel free to send in any questions as they come up. We will get to those at the end. There's a Q&A box at the bottom of your screen. You can click on that at any time and send them in, and they will all be read off anonymously. So if you're worried about your name being shared, it will not be. And then that's it. Doug, do you have anything you want to say before we start off the video?
Yeah, please enjoy. This is a beautifully done video by Liana and Len Augsburger. So I want to thank them for doing such a great job. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, let me get this pulled up. The roots of the American Numismatic Association extend back to 1888, when Dr. George F. Heath of Monroe, Michigan, published the first issue of the American Numismatist. The publication initially took the form of a dealer house organ, in which Heath presented feature articles along with lists of coins for sale. In January of 1891, Heath included a numismatic directory of U.S. collectors, an organizational effort that led to the question Heath posed in the February issue: what's the matter of having an American Numismatic Association? Others agreed, and in October of 1891, the ANA was founded with 61 charter members. Heath continued to publish The Numismatist, now on behalf of the ANA, until his death in 1908. While the ANA prospered with growing membership, annual conventions, and a flagship publication, the lack of a physical presence made it difficult to build and maintain a numismatic collection. The ANA cabinet was informally established in the 1920s, but the most important growth in the collection occurred following the official opening of the ANA headquarters in Colorado Springs in 1967. Coming full circle, the guests at the June 10th building dedication included Donald Heath, son of the charter member George F. Heath. Heath used the occasion to donate to the ANA the original hand press used by his father to print The Numismatist in its earliest days. Now with a physical footprint, the ANA Museum was poised for growth. Today, the ANA collection is one of the few that contain both an 1804 dollar and a 1913 Liberty nickel. Rated number 1 and 2 in the first edition of Whitman's 100 Greatest U.S. Coins, these two pieces are among the most recognized in the entire U.S. series. With respect to the 1804 dollar, the ANA is doubly blessed, owning not one but two examples of the so-called King of American coins. The Class I 1804 dollars, of which 8 are known, were produced under President Andrew Jackson for diplomatic purposes. The ANA example comes from Willis H. DuPont, who donated the coin to the ANA in 1994. Following a well-publicized theft of the DuPont residence in 1967, this coin was recovered in Switzerland in 1993. The ANA also holds a Class III 1804 dollar. The Class III coins, of which 6 are known, represent U.S. Mint restrikes coined around 1860. The ANA example came from coin dealers Aubrey and Adeline Beebe in 1991, who noted the 100th anniversary of the ANA in that year. Remarkably, the Beebes were also the source of the 1913 Liberty nickel in the ANA collection. One of 5 known, this piece was acquired in 1967 from the estate of coin dealer John McDermott, who was fond of carrying the coin in his pocket and exhibiting the famed rarity to his friends and collectors. Not surprisingly, this is the only known example that exhibits circulation wear. Aubrey and Adeline Beebe purchased this coin from the McDermott estate and in 1991 donated it to the ANA. Today, only 3 coins are available to the public, as the 2 remaining pieces are in the Smithsonian and the ANA. The ANA collection also contains important U.S. coins that are not included in the frontline rarities. The 1933 eagle was struck early in the year, prior to Roosevelt's gold recall in April. The obverse design is a perennial favorite, and even worn examples of $10 Indians trade at levels above bullion value. Most of the 1933 production was melted within the mint, but about 35 survivors are known today, including this example in the ANA collection. While not as famous as the $20 issue of the same year, 1933 eagles are still valued in the mid-six-figure range. The 1792 half-diem was the first coin struck by the U.S. Mint in 1792, and is today known to the extent of about 250 pieces. Its status as the first U.S. coin makes it exceptionally popular among collectors. Although the workmanship is somewhat crude, particularly the scrawny eagle reverse, the historical significance of the coin remains compelling. The ANA coin, a pleasing, about uncirculated example, was donated to the American Numismatic Association in 2011 by rare coin dealer Steve Contursi. One of the more significant items in the ANA Museum is not a coin, but rather the first steam-powered coining press introduced by the Philadelphia Mint in 1836. The transition from the manually operated screw press to the steam-powered press represented an important evolution in the Mint's technology, and it's not surprising that commemorative pieces were struck to honor the occasion. Indeed, the Mint director Robert M. Patterson had the first such token edge marked as such. Struck on March 23, 1836, Patterson wrote to the Secretary-Treasurer the same day, "I also send by this mail some copper pieces struck at the Mint today on our new press by steam. They are the first coin struck by this press in America, and I must consider this day, therefore, as marking an epoch in our coinage." The press itself has an interesting history. It was used at the Mint from 1836 until 1875, when it was sold to George Soley, a Philadelphia die sinker. Soley exhibited the press at large expositions and produced numerous souvenir tokens that were sold to fair attendees. A typical example paired George Washington, always a good seller, with the Lord's Prayer on the reverse. These pieces are collectible in themselves, given their connection to the first steam press. The Franklin Institute in Philadelphia acquired the press from the Soley estate in 1926, and exhibited the press for many years before it was moved to the ANA Museum in 2000. Like the Mint in 1836, the ANA marked the occasion with commemorative tokens, struck in gold, silver, and copper. Although not part of the ANA collection, the Harry W. Bass Jr. collection played an important role in the museum in recent years. Following a series of 4 auction sales by Bowers and Morena in 1999 and 2000, the Bass Foundation retained a core collection of early U.S. gold varieties, pattern pieces, and the only complete set of $3 gold pieces. The Bass Gallery in the ANA Museum featured these portions of the collection from 2001 to 2022, prior to their sale by Heritage Auctions in 2022 and 23. The star of this group was the unique 1870s $3 gold piece. First revealed to the numismatic public in 1907, the precise origin of this piece remains ambiguous. The best research points to the San Francisco coiner J.B. Harmstead, who likely coined a second example beyond the piece deposited in the San Francisco Mint cornerstone. That piece, too, is shrouded in mystery. In 2004, the researchers Richard Kelly and Nancy Oliver discovered an inventory of the cornerstone coins, which listed the 1870 S3, but the cornerstone itself has never been identified. The Bass collection further included an ultra-high-relief example of the 1907 St. Gaudens $20 gold piece, widely considered to be the most aesthetically pleasing of all United States coin designs. The story of President Theodore Roosevelt encouraging coinage redesign in the early 20th century is well known, and the ultra-high-relief 20 represents the pinnacle of this renewal. To be sure, the design was completely impractical for circulating coinage. The pieces required 7 strikes to completely impart the deeply sculpted detail, with annealing of the planchet required in between blows of the press. None of this diminishes the artistic achievement, and these coins have drawn substantial collector interest since the time of issue. Much more could be said of the Bass exhibit at the ANA, but the early date proof gold is especially notable. With little in the way of contemporary documentation, these coins must speak for themselves. This cameo example is one of only 2 known proofs, with the other piece in the Smithsonian, almost certainly set aside at the time of issue by the chief coiner Adam Eckfeldt. Similarly, only 2 1821 proof half-eagles are known, again with the other piece in the National Numismatic Collection at the Smithsonian. This cameo quarter eagle, dated 1824, greeted visitors to the ANA Museum for over 20 years. Remarkably, these coins fail to appear in the mint records of the time, but their physical appearance leaves no doubt that they were specially prepared, and the presence of like examples in the mint cabinet reinforces their proof status. The ANA also holds significant examples of U.S. territorial gold, including 2 complete sets of Colorado Clark, Gruber & Company gold coinage, as well as a collection of 17 of the 19 known types of Lesher dollars, a fitting nod to the geographical location of the ANA in the so-called Centennial State. Another exceptional group of territorial gold coinage is the recently acquired selection of 24 California pieces, with no less than 7 of the massive $50 gold slugs represented, including the elusive 1855 Wass, Molitor & Co. issue, and a group of pieces from other assayers, including Moffett & Company, Gregg & Norris, Baldwin & Company, and Augustus Humbert. While not nearly as well known as the California gold rush, thousands of prospectors arrived in Colorado in the late 1850s, amid reports of gold discoveries in the Denver area. As transporting gold bullion across the mountains from Colorado to the nearest mint in San Francisco was a costly and risky proposition, it was no surprise that local coiners stepped in to assay, refine, and coin ore delivered from the gold fields. One of these firms was Clark, Gruber & Company, which produced gold coinage in Denver in 1860 and 1861. The enterprise was so successful that in 1862, the U.S. Congress passed legislation to acquire Clark, Gruber & Company for itself. Among the ANA collection is this rare $20 Clark Gruber piece dated 1860. The reverse legend reads Pikes Peak Gold, although no gold was actually found on Pikes Peak. Still, the landmark was widely known, and the name served well for marketing purposes, even if the depiction of Pikes Peak on the reverse of the coin was crude at best. In 1861, Clark Gruber adopted a design that closely approximated the double eagle of the U.S. Mint. While the central figures are similar, Pikes Peak replaces Liberty in the headband, and the legend, Clark Gruber & Company, replaces United States of America on the reverse. The piece clearly exhibits the challenges of a startup mint. The dies are not as finely detailed as a U.S. Mint product, and the strike is weak, especially on the reverse. The ANA also holds the Aubrey and Adeline Beebe collection of American currency, much of which was purchased by the Beebes in 1955 from James M. Wade, who was the assistant cashier at the Chase National Bank in New York. Wade was numismatically connected and oversaw sales of important items from the William Wooden and Colonel E.H.R. Green collections. The Beebe paper money collection was donated to the ANA in 2 parts, in 1987 and 1988, and consists of over 800 individual notes and uncut sheets. Among the highlights are this uncut sheet of 1896 $1 educational notes, inscribed on the day of issue by the Treasury Secretary Daniel Nash Morgan to Charles Gregg Watson. The 1896 educational series is among the most artistic of U.S. paper money designs, and this $1 note depicts Liberty instructing a child as she points to the national symbols of the Washington Monument, U.S. Capitol, and a copy of the Constitution. Surrounding the image are names of famous Americans, with George Washington occupying the center spot. A $5 note, also part of the 1896 educational series, depicts Liberty holding aloft a light bulb, signifying the impact of electricity in technology and commerce. It's difficult to imagine today that the government would so honor the semiconductor, computer, or internet, and this depiction thus conveys the contemporary sense of wonder and expectation regarding the power of electricity. Depicted on the reverse are the Civil War Union generals Ulysses S. Grant and Philip Sheridan. This $1 national banknote, issued by the Deseret National Bank of Salt Lake City in 1872, is notable for the signature of Brigham Young, the second president of the LDS Church. The obverse of this example exhibits a low serial number, while the reverse illustrates the landing of the Pilgrims at Plymouth Harbor. This 1891 Treasury note bears the serial number 1, with the lowest numbers especially prized by collectors. Because these notes were redeemable in silver or gold, few survived. This is one of 21 known examples and serves as the plate note in the Friedberg reference on U.S. paper money. The obverse features a portrait of William Seward, who in 1869 negotiated the purchase of Alaska from Russia. A final example from the ANA collection, the so-called watermelon note, is well known even among non-collectors, and is named for the thick zeros on the reverse, which approximate the shape of a watermelon. A total of 35 such notes are reported, and examples regularly sell in the six-figure range. The obverse bears the portrait of David Farragut, the first man in the United States Navy to hold the rank of admiral. Among recent acquisitions by the ANA, the Washington medals donated by Dwight Manley in 2021 stand front row and center. The Manley donation originated primarily from the collection of William S. Baker, the author of the 1885 work Medallic Portraits of Washington, which served as the standard reference for over a century. Baker's collection, consisting of over 1,000 pieces, was deaccessioned by the Historical Society of Pennsylvania in 2019 and acquired in large part by Manley. Washington pieces were especially popular in the mid-19th century as a wave of veneration for the Founding Fathers swept across the country. In 1861, Mint Director James Ross Snowden published an important catalog of Washington medals, which described the related pieces in the U.S. Mint cabinet. The Mint even produced a medal commemorating this portion of the Mint cabinet, which was naturally launched on Washington's birthday, February 22nd, in 1860. Included in the Baker collection was this Washington Before Boston piece, an example of the first medal awarded by Congress, granted for Washington's role in the British evacuation of Boston in March of 1776. Engraved by Benjamin de Vivier of the Paris Mint, the obverse bears Houdon's familiar bust of Washington, while the reverse depicts Washington before the city, watching as the British evacuate via the harbor. A 2007 study by John Adams and Ann Bentley identified 31 examples of this scarce metal. A single piece struck in gold resides in the Boston Public Library. The Baker collection further included this rare emancipation tag from Washington, D.C. While the Emancipation Proclamation of January 1, 1863 is well known, it turns out that this act applied only to the Confederate States. Earlier, on April 16, 1862, Congress passed a separate emancipation that freed the enslaved living in Washington, D.C. The person named on this tag, Henry Clark, is presumably one of the enslaved who was freed. The obverse die appears elsewhere in the Washington series and was also used to strike identity tags for soldiers in the Civil War. The 1805 Commander-in-Chief Armies of the United States Medal, one of 10 known, is a key to the Washington series. President Jefferson's example remains in the collection at Monticello, indicating the contemporary regard for the importance of this medal. Joseph Sansom, the engraver, intended this as the first in a series of medals documenting the history of the American Revolution, though only 4 issues were actually produced. Still, the aesthetic appeal of this piece is obvious, and examples of any of the 4 Sansom medals are highly prized. The Manley donation to the ANA included other important Washington pieces not from the Baker collection, such as this 1792 Washington Indian Peace Medal, one of 5 known of this date. The medal depicts Washington extending a peace pipe, while the Indian lays down his axe to the left. The reverse reveals a heraldic eagle, derived from the Great Seal. Indian peace medals of this era are exceptionally rare, and the number of forgeries is legion. A final selection from the Manley donation is this 1800 Washington Funeral Urn Medal in gold by Jacob Perkins. The Perkins Funeral Urn medals, typically hold, were worn during Washington funeral processions held in Boston, which took place in the early months of 1800. The obverse of this piece depicts Washington in uniform, while the reverse details important dates in Washington's career. Prior to Manley's acquisition, this medal was previously in the Garrett and Partrick collections. Today, the Edward C. Rochette Money Museum at the A&A in Colorado Springs serves as the public face of the A&A collection. While the entire cabinet is not on display all at once, rotating exhibits highlight various aspects of the collection. A&A members may also make appointments to view specific portions of the collection. The museum is open from Tuesday to Saturday, 10:30 a.m. to 5 p.m., and further serves as a central gathering point during the annual A&A Summer Seminar. Online exhibits are always available at money.org/money-museum, and for further questions, contact museum@money.org. Alrighty. Then we're going to get dug back in here. There we go. Okay, let's see. We have a few things in the Q&A. One of these is a question. For everyone else, go ahead and send in your questions and we will work our way down the list. So we're going to start off with, did any of the private minting companies get in trouble for counterfeiting or imitating actual US coins? Was there ever any fraud involved, such as coins being underweight or wrongly labeled metallic content?
Well, that's a great question. At the time when the private mints were operating, it was not illegal to create private coinage. However, there was the problem of approaching the appearance of regular U.S. coinage too closely. If you did, then you could be prosecuted or at least warned about that. On the other hand, they wanted to make their gold coins look something like the actual U.S. gold coins, so people would understand, well, would accept them. So, the closer it looked like a regular U.S. coin, the better. But they did sometimes get in trouble, so they had to be careful. That's why if they used Liberty, they would use the name of their company on the tiara, and then they'd have some minor changes on design. They'll use the name of the company or other information on there. Yes, there was fraud. The companies, so what in California and Colorado, what they tried to do was approach a standard US coin as closely as possible in their gold content, but they had to make a profit. So they're taking in gold dust and nuggets and everything else. And the key element was if they were consistent. Now, some companies became famous for not being consistent, and they usually went out of business very quickly. J.J. Conway and some other places had problems with that. Sometimes they issued their coinage was not similar enough to the regular U.S. Well, they didn't look like coins; they looked like a token instead, and that would contribute to a failure. And then some companies deliberately mix their gold with higher amounts of copper or other metals to basically increase their profit beyond what the public was willing to accept. And in particular, if the weights were off and all that, then people lost confidence very quickly.
All right. Similar to the territorial gold and Washington-related donations, what other areas of the A&A cabinet might benefit from public support?
Yeah, Len, I'm not sure exactly what you mean by benefit from public support. If you mean donations and things, well, we accept donations on a regular basis. We have vast collections that include world coins, include some of the great rarities. We have an ancient collection that is excellent. We have several thousand Roman coins, including some great rarities. We have a great ancient Greek collection that includes a decadrama of Syracuse and some other very nice pieces. And then the world coins are represented across the board with great rarities, but also more importantly, from my standpoint, we really do represent the history of money from the very earliest times up to the modern day. We did an exhibit not too long ago, well, more than a decade ago now. It doesn't seem like it's that long ago, on the money of the world today, basically, with one of the concepts behind it was we didn't have very many objects that came from the 21st century. So why not do an exhibit and collect some of these things? They're very common, but 100 years from now, 50 years from now, they might not be as common. So we wanted to have them in the collection, sort of get ahead.
All right. We would like to visit the A&A Museum. Is there anything special we should be aware of to visit, and how long do the typical visitors spend in the museum?
Well, so one of the things, make sure that you check the times, make sure there's, that we are open. We are open from Tuesday to Saturday, 10:30 to 5. So that's fine. We have, unfortunately, we do have people that come in on Mondays, and there's not much we can help with that. But on our website, we have quite a bit of material showing the current exhibits, including virtual tours. One of the things I recommend is if you bring your smartphone, we have QR codes that link to those tours so that you can see obverse and reverse of every coin, every metal that's on display, which is a great addition. And typically most of our visitors, I mean, it all depends on, do you want to read every label, every panel? But I would say at least an hour. And if you are really excited and want to spend a lot of time to see everything, you could spend up to 2 to 3 hours in the museum. But typically an hour and a half is a good time frame.
All right. I understand that the exhibits tend to rotate. What's currently on display?
So currently we have, our main exhibit is the Metal in America, which features, among other things, a selection of the Washingtonia, the Baker Manley collection, as we call it now, including the 1792 Washington Indian Peace Medal, and some other great pieces. It focuses on how metals can tell the story of our American history, anything from the Committee Americana medals up through presidential medals, and then medals talking about the history of flight and the space program. We have some civil rights medals as well, and then a nice selection of art medals, including the Society of Medalists and other pieces, including some of the current artists are involved, like Eugene Daub or Gene Stephen Solman. So there's some great materials there. Then we have our 1804 and 1913, $1804 and 1913 nickel, along with two examples of the half diem, the A&A example, and another one on loan. And our downstairs exhibit features the history of money from A to Z, essentially. So it's anything from the traditional monies, anything from nails to fur to shells of various types, and then goes through a survey of world coinage and paper money with a nice, more in-depth, but not in super detail, history of the United States, from the colonial beginnings through the different eras of U.S. coin issues, talking about things like the Renaissance American coinage that Teddy Roosevelt initiated, and then the earliest paper and how the U.S. was the leader in paper money design. And basically, due to the fact that we didn't have sources of silver and gold initially on the East Coast, we had to come up with something. And we were really primary driving force in the acceptance of paper money in the Western world. But we also have things like the earliest paper money that exists today, which are the Chinese notes that came out of the siege of Peking. So they're 14th century Ming notes, and we have one of those on display.
Very cool. Since the vast collection has been sold, what's the plan for the space it previously occupied?
That's something we're working on right now. The plan is it's been renamed the Americana Gallery, and we will have the Americana exhibit. The Americana exhibit is designed to feature those parts of the collection that are not normally on display. We have a vast collection, over 275,000 objects. Of those, I would call maybe 120,000 of the core items, items that are unique in the sense of not duplicated within the collection, and also represent the various types from tokens, metals, coins, and paper money. But so this will be a survey of American history as viewed through the A&A collection. So we will have, for example, one of the things that people don't see very often are the BB notes, the uncut sheets. So my approach in this is going to be trying to get a display that includes some very, great rarities, but also items that people can relate to, so that if people can collect silver certificates. Some of them are very expensive, things like the $1 silver certificate of the educational series. Those are fairly expensive. I mean, they're pretty expensive in great condition. The sheet is unobtainable for most people. So showing the sheet with an example of a new note as the reverse gives people an opportunity to see what the sheet looks like. But it's also something that could be collected. We'll have classic commemoratives. Some of them are extremely collectible, very popular, but we'll also have a full pan pack set of the 1915 gold, which is a little less available, let's say. So the idea is to be able to show things that are very special, but also things that speak to collectors, and in some cases are readily available in one way or another. An example that's more special than available are the gold rush coins. So through recent donations, mostly through Dr. Carlson Chambliss, actually, we have a very nice representative set of California gold. So one whole section of the exhibit of 4 cases will be early US gold, just to show examples, and no complete typesets or anything like that. But early US gold before the branch mints, and then followed up by the first gold rush in the US, which occurred in Georgia and North Carolina. So we have a nice set of Dahlonega and Charlotte gold. A couple of the pioneer pieces are the private issues that were issued as well. And then followed by the California gold rush, and then the Colorado gold rush with the 2 sets of Clark Gruber coins, which, I mean, for the A&A to have 2 complete sets is pretty special. I'm not sure that anybody else has them, and certainly not on display currently. And then we'll have things such as one of the cases will feature Civil War tokens. We'll have a case talking about two cases that are related. One will show Civil War paper currency, very short on the US currency, but basically talking about how the Confederacy tried to create an economy, tried to create a money to support their economy, and were forced to use paper. And then how Civil War tokens were another way telling the story of what happens when you have bullion coinage and you have a war or some other crisis. It disappears from circulation. And in the Civil War, it disappeared in circulation to the extent that small change, even cents, were unavailable. So, well, private individuals, basically the equivalent of 7-Eleven started making alternatives for money because they couldn't make change. And if you can't, you bring your $5 bill in and you can't get change for it, how do you deal with that? And this was another way of doing it. So it's focused on stories. It's focused on the overview of the history of American numismatics, but it also features those parts of our collection which we don't have the space to show. We have about 5,000 square feet, and there's only so much you can show at any one time. So I think it's an opportunity to really do something special. One of the final parts of it, if you know that display area, there's two half-round glass cases. One of them will feature a selection from the Baker Manley Washingtonia collection, and I intend that to be sort of a core. That collection is so special in many ways that over the next 2 years, I hope to have create a center for research online on our webpage for Washingtonian material, where people can come and see all of the Baker Manley pieces in their own listing, not just our regular online collection listing, but in its own web page. And it'll be designed to be very rich in links so that you can link to greater information about each piece outside, in some cases, resources outside of the ANA, and then within the ANA, and using the library and other elements, and NMP as well, because NMP has done such a great job of making available vast resources that were almost impossible to get before. And I hope to be able to make that a really rich resource so that anybody that's interested in Washingtonia, numismatically speaking, will come to the ANA first to make use of this fabulous resource. So that's essentially what's going to replace. It's a big order. I'm hoping that by January we will have the exhibit open. We won't have the Washingtonia research stuff done, but as we go along, there'll be more and more online material available, including the usual virtual tour and the 360 virtual reality sort of tour as well.
Yes, there is a great tour available on the website, the 360 virtual reality. If you're unable to visit the museum, I used that multiple times in putting the video together. Highly recommend taking a look at that if you want to experience the museum but are unable to get out to Colorado Springs. It's very user-friendly and well done.
Thanks. And it's also one of those things that I've had several people mention, oh, I only had an hour today and I saw the QR codes and got to the virtual reality tour. I'm going to spend next week looking at the rest of the collection. So
is there wheelchair access to the museum?
We do have wheelchair access. We have a ramp to get into the building, and we do have a wheelchair. We do have that, but if you have more than one person that needs a wheelchair, you'll need to bring your own. But everything is designed to be as much as possible ADA compatible, so that you should be able to see, if not everything, I can't promise that, but the vast majority of items will be accessible for people in wheelchairs. So that should work.
Okay. And for that person, if you had any follow-up on the specifics, feel free to send something else back into the Q&A and we can touch on it more specifically. Let's see. Does the ANA collection include much in the way of world or ancient coins? What about rare numismatic books?
So yes, on all of that. One of the first exhibits I did when I got to the ANA in 2004, but in 2005-06, we put together an ancient exhibit featuring ancient Greek and Roman coins. One of the things I was very surprised with, because the ANA has not been known for having an ancient collection, I was able to create an exhibit that was an excellent, not bragging there, but an excellent overview of the ancient Greek and Roman worlds with the collection. So something like 75-80%, except for a few high rarities, special coins of the exhibit was based on the coin. So they went from the ancient Celtic coinage all the way through, Parthia and Carthaginian, all of the things that you would expect in any decent survey of the ancient world we had. So it is a very good collection that way. The majority of the collection, in fact, is made up of world coins. And it's an interesting collection. As I've worked over it over the years, I've been surprised at some of the things that are in there. We have things like a Russian family ruble. Didn't expect to see one. I'd come from the Smithsonian, and their Russian collection is spectacular because they got the Grand Duke Mikhailovich collection. The collection at the ANA for Russian is not spectacular, but there are some great materials in it. And then you find that across the board. So there's we've got an excellent English collection. We have fabulous medals in certain areas, some of the British medals, some of the French medals. So it's very wide ranging, and occasionally we had major donors. The Herdigan collection, for example, which included mostly world coins, had over 7,000 pieces, and almost all of them, even if they were common, are in great condition, and there were some great rarities included. So it's something that, if you do have questions or are looking for some things, it's worth asking, because you may be surprised at what we do have, and hopefully we can make it accessible if you're doing research or something.
All right. Has the ANA considered moving to a larger building to put more coins and books on display?
Well, it would always be nice, yes. I back to the previous question, the library does have extreme rarities. We have, the first printed numismatic book. We have an example of Historia, well, the illustrated, considered the first book, Numismata. Wow, I can't remember the name offhand. But we do have 75,000 books or so, and over 150,000 items in the library that include catalogs and all that. Back to the question you just asked, moving to a bigger building would be great. The cost would be huge. So when we came to Colorado Springs in 1967, we got a very special deal. We are on the college campus of Colorado College. We do not own the land we're on. We pay $1 rent a year for 99 years, and we had to build the building ourselves. That's one of the big issues, in the sense that if we moved anywhere else, we'd either have to buy the land and then buy a new building, which could be prohibitively expensive. You're talking millions of dollars for a modern museum building that would be large enough to house everything and increase the exhibit space. But it is something, obviously it would be great if we could do that. But it would substantially increase any costs we have at a time when our boards have been very concerned to make sure that we have a sustainable budget over the next, hopefully we're around for another 100 years. So we need to make sure that we can do that.
Do you have any UK merchant countermarked dollars?
We do have a number of countermarked pieces, specifically UK marked Are we talking about US dollars that are countermarked? I can't say that specifically. However, we do have some of the trade dollars that are countermarked. We have a lot of pieces that you see a lot, the countermarked pieces of 8, so Spanish dollars, and also US pieces with Chinese chop marks, things like that. Yes, illustrium imaginas. I see somebody answered that. That's the word I was trying to come up with.
Yes, that was the first illustrated numismatic book. Thank you to whoever contributed that.
Yeah, we have an example of that, and along with other things. So any other questions at this point? Let's see.
Can you talk a little bit about the ANA's holding as far as copies of early volumes of the Numismatist?
Well, we have, to my knowledge, 2 complete sets of the Numismatist, and I think we have possibly a third. I'd have to talk to Akio, our library manager, to know that for sure. But we do have full sets of the Numismatist going from the earliest up to today. One of them is kept in our rare book room, the early versions. The other is on the shelves as a research item, so you can actually see all of the earliest ones. You can't necessarily check them out.
All right, then I have 2 other questions here. For anyone else watching, go ahead and send in any other questions that you have. Otherwise, we'll wrap it up here pretty soon. But for now, how did you get involved with the ANA?
How did I get involved with the ANA? Well, I was working at the Smithsonian. I started working there in the numismatic collection in 1991. In the late 90s, well, 1993, I started going to the summer seminar for the first time. I wanted to expand my knowledge of ancient coins through taking a course with Bob Hoag, the illustrious predecessor of mine who worked from 1982 to 2002 at the ANA, or 2001. And I realized that it was such a great experience to actually have access to all of these people who were experts in the field, and they weren't at shows, so they had time to actually speak with people, and then you eat lunch, eat dinner with them, and just have a great time nerding out on coins. But from a professional standpoint, as a Smithsonian collection manager and all that, it was also an amazing opportunity to meet the audience, because museum staff do not always get a chance to actually meet the people that they're creating their exhibits for. And I think it's very important to get a sense of what people are interested in and the kinds of things that might pique their interest, especially in supporting the museum and supporting, you have to show things that people are interested in to some extent, and also use that interest to allow you to tell some more of the stories that you can show through your objects. And so from that standpoint, I started going to the ANA as regularly as I could for summer seminar. And then in 2003, I got a phone call from the then executive director and asked if I was interested in a job of being the museum curator and museum director. And I said yes, mainly because of the opportunity from my standpoint. At the Smithsonian, I got into museums because I love exhibits. I love telling stories. I love being able to use objects to tell history. I'm a historian at heart. And there was always a challenge because it's a large organization. Everybody's competing for space to show exhibits, and you have to go through committee after committee and all this stuff. And so it would take 6 months to do a single case, for example. And with the ANA, I saw an opportunity to really work on exhibits and focus on doing the things that I love to do. I love to have the light in kids' eyes, their eyes light up as they find out something new. And for adults, I love having conversations and being able to talk to them about why money is so interesting and how it's important to our history.
Very cool. What's your personal favorite piece or section of the collection?
Oh, that's a difficult one because there's different ways of measuring what's, my favorite. One of my, I mean, one of my favorite pieces right now, and I think possibly the most historically important piece, is the 1792 Washington Indian Peace Medal. To me, that speaks volumes in a lot of ways. I mean, here's a peace medal that doesn't fit the mold that we have today of every relationship we had with the Native Americans was a cheating, lying, backstabbing sort of agreement where we were stealing land. I mean, this was a period in 1792 where the U.S. was not in the ascendancy. We were actually in fairly desperate straits. We were a new country. We'd had some serious problems, the Whiskey Rebellion, with our own people being very upset with the government. It was not sure that we were going to exist for a lot longer. And the British were inciting the native tribes in the north to raid. Well, we had a tiny little army. So there were some attempts at creating problems down south in the southern states. We couldn't possibly fight a two-front war at that point. And so it was considered very important that we shore up our relationships with the southern tribes. And that's where the 1792 medal comes in focus, because here you show an image of George Washington himself. This is not a distant figure, not a bust looking like a statue or something. This is actually George Washington sharing a peace pipe with a native chief. And interestingly, they're on the same level. They're basically two representatives of their nations speaking to each other as equals, each one standing before representations of their own people. So the chief is in front of the forest, the woods that represent the society and culture of Eastern Indian tribes. And Washington is standing in front of a scene which includes a plowing scene and a farm scene representing, the Western culture. So it was an excellent example of equals dealing with each other. Now, it's not unusual to have medals and gifts of this sort that were used as diplomatic gifts, because traditionally European nations, any nations, when they treat with each other, they exchange gifts. This is putting the native tribes on the same level as the Europeans or any other foreign entity. There's not the paternalism that you see later with the Indian peace medals. And so from that standpoint, I think it's a very interesting and important part of our history. When it comes to other things, there's a lot of different areas that I love. My primary love numismatically is ancient coinage, Greek and Roman coins. So there's some wonderful materials there. But in the end, the educational series of silver certificates, the story of the gold rush, those are the things that tell stories about why they were issued, what was going on at the time, and then in some cases bring up controversies. And it's interesting to see what those controversies were at the time and whether they're relevant now. I always like that idea. It's like, oh, now we wouldn't even worry about that, or now that would be a huge deal, but for back then it was nothing. So
how often do you get inquiries about fake Washington Indian peace medals?
Actually, not very often. In the past, there's been times where there's been a fair number. Mostly when I've had them in the past, it's because of gun shows, because people will come in. A lot of gun shows, at least 10, 15 years ago, you'd see, an old Winchester or something like that, and somebody would think, oh, it's a great idea. Why don't we put a Indian peace medal with it, because it was used in the West and by cowboys, and all that. And so it was quite common, especially for the engraved Washington pieces, but also some of the badly struck, badly copied silver round Indian piece medals. And almost always they would come with a very native looking necklace. And it's like, no, that's not what they wore. That's not what they used to wear them with. You know, they'd be shell necklaces or something like this. And you could tell. But, you know, from my standpoint, I was lucky in having worked at the Smithsonian collection. There was a very nice collection of medals, including Indian piece medals, mostly copies and later counterfeits, but it was a way of figuring out which ones were real and not, because you could see a variety of the different types of copies that had been made.
Okay, then that's the last one we have in here for now. So we're going to wrap it up. And if you have any last minute questions, you can send them in and we'll hit them here in a minute. Otherwise, thank you so much, Doug, for taking the time out to do the Q&A for this one. It's always exciting to have someone actually connected to the collection on to talk about it after the video. So thank you very much.
Well, thank you for the opportunity again. Liana, you did an excellent job in putting this together, and Len, your research has put this all together beautifully as well. So thank you very much, and I have a great day, everybody.
All right, our next presentation will be starting at 12:30. We've got John Conwer and Ronald Gamble talking about facts and misconceptions concerning the medallic issues during Lafayette's 1824 and 5 visit to America. So if you want to learn more about some medals, tune back in at 12:30. Otherwise, thank you all. Hope to see some familiar names back in the audience throughout the day, and we'll be back.